Hi, I'm Joseph R. Lewis and I write adventures. And I've been getting a bunch of questions and requests from you guys about how to lay out the documentation of an adventure, how to actually do the page design. So that's what we're going to talk about today, layout. So I have some mixed feelings about doing this video because part of my instinct is to just give you guys a word template or several word templates for different ways to do your layouts and let you guys just, go at it with those tools. But if I do that, then I'm giving you a fish when what I really want to do is teach you to fish. So we're going to do this the hard way, and I'm going to try to talk you through all of the things you need to learn to do for yourself, and the kinds of decisions and questions you need to be asking yourself to do your own layout the way you want to do it. Because if I give you a template, then you're just going to end up using that template, and your layouts are going to look like mine. And I don't know that mine are the best. I think they're fine. I think they're good. I think they are the way I like them, but I don't want to see a world full of my layouts, my designs. So I want to help you guys do your layouts your way as best as possible. So that's what we're going to try to do today. The first decision you need to make when you're about to lay out your adventure is what paper size or what page size you want to use. The two that I use are letter size and digest sized. Now, letter size is what you're all familiar with here in the United States. That's 8.5 by 11 inches. That's standard paper that we have in all of our printers. And it's a nice big page. It allows you to do either two really large columns or three fairly good sized columns. It allows you to create a lot of space for artwork. If you want to do large detailed maps, that can all be great. Also, if it's printed out at the table, usually it can lay flat because it's so big, it's so heavy that it will lie flat on the table, and the GMs tend to appreciate a resource that lies flat. The other option, digest sized, is literally half the size. Here in the U.S., that's 5.5 by 8.5. So if you want proof that it's the same, it's half size. There it is, digest size in front of letter size. I like digest very much. As you can see, they make very small, convenient little booklets that fit in the palm of your hand. There's less space, obviously, for artwork and maps and detail like that. And usually you don't want to do more than 2 columns of content. However, it's a very compact presentation. It's easy to throw in your bag and take it with you to a con or to a game night. These are also easy to print out for yourself because since it's half a page, if you just flatten it out, you can do both pages on a single piece of paper. So again, easy to print out for people at home if they're just buying the PDF and printing it out that way. So both good options, but you should make an intentional decision. If you want a larger page because you want to present more information across the page or across 2 pages, it's a spread, um, or the smaller digest size because you have a smaller adventure or you don't need detailed graphics, whatever it may be. So be thoughtful about what page size you're using and why. And if you're in another country, then your paper may start with letters like A and B, and there are analogs to these paper sizes. But again, think about whether you want it to be large or small, why you're making that decision. Look at other people's products, see which ones you want to emulate, which ones you want to be like, um, and make your choice and go forward. The next thing you'll need to learn about laying out a document is something called sections. And a section is a kind of way to divide up the content inside a document. And that can be a section can be inside a page. There could be multiple sections in a page, or a section could be many pages long. This is a feature inside Microsoft Word and similar layout programs. So you want to look for something called sections and learn how to insert section breaks. That's what divides up your document into sections. And the reason that I use sections is because different parts of my documents have different numbers of columns, which we'll talk about in a minute. So, for instance, on the cover page, I might only have a single column or 2 columns where I say, author name and title and description, whatever it is. And then on the next page, I might have content, and that might have 3 columns or something different. Or I may want to have a title that goes all the way across. That's 1 column. Each one of those is being divided up into a section that has different features in design and layout. So the first thing you want to do is, if you want a more complex layout, learn how to use sections in order to break up your document that can use different features, different numbers of columns, different widths and designs, and whatever it may be, so that you can control the appearance of your document the way you want it to look. So you need to learn about sections and section breaks. Another small feature that you'll want to probably have control over or use in your layout are the headers and footers. Header is a small bar at the top of your page. Footer is a small bar at the bottom. And these are separate from the body text. The body is the middle, header and footer at the top of the bottom. And usually I use the header and footer for information that helps the reader, which is usually the GM, to navigate the document. So obviously you think that could be including page numbers. It could also include uh, section numbers or chapter numbers if you were dividing up your document in another way. You could also have in your headers and footers things like the name of the adventure or even your name as the author. But you could also have things that are helping the GM to navigate through the document. So if pages 1 through 10 are the forest, you could have it say the forest across the top for those 10 pages. And then when they get to the dungeon, you could have it say the dungeon across the top. So that way, if they're flipping through the pages physically, they have a copy, or even if they're in the PDF and they're just clicking forward and they get disoriented, having as much navigational information on the page is very helpful. So that can be just page numbers, which is great, but you can also have things like section and chapter numbers and section names and titles that are either at the top or at the bottom. Um, I've used both. Lately, what have I been doing? I've been putting the title of the adventure and the page numbers at the bottom and not using the top so much, but you can absolutely use both. Sometimes you may want to offset your header and footer using like a thin bar, a horizontal line, so that that little text at the top and the bottom doesn't run into your body text in the middle. So those are good tools to use, your header and footer, to help the GMs navigate through your document. So the next thing we're going to talk about is columns. Uh, in the original documentation from very, very long ago, the original adventure modules, a lot of those were laid out in a single column of text, which means it was sort of like a book where the text of the line would go all the way across the page and the next line would go all the way across the page. That's a single column. Um, You've probably seen multi-column documentation in a lot of other places like textbooks and newspapers and magazines, where they'll have a small vertical white space or even with a thin black line drawn, and then the text is just in narrower portions. And part of the reason for using that is that it makes it a little easier on the eye to look at smaller chunks of information at a time. Looking at a huge paragraph that goes all the way across the page, it's just kind of psychologically daunting that there's that much text. You need to read through all of it. And having it broken down into smaller blocks, smaller paragraphs, just because it's physically narrower, is helpful on the eye, especially since in our adventure, we're going to be breaking it up with a lot more bullet points and headings and things. So being able to put it in small boxes because of the use of columns is very helpful. When I do an 8.5 by 11, a letter size book like Carcassonne, I tend to use 3 columns. I think that packs the content down very narrowly, and it helps me with my writing to try to make things very, specific, targeted, brief, and on point. And it also allows you to put a lot of content on a single page if you have 3 columns. Each column could be its own room. That's 3 rooms on a page with a lot of detail or more. When I do a smaller booklet, like a digest-sized product, I tend to use 2 columns just because the page is smaller and there's less room, and that makes sense to me. But I strongly encourage you to not use 1 column. Again, 1 column, it's too wide, and the content will start to look like huge blocks of information, which is more difficult to read. It's more difficult to scan, to use quickly at the table. So again, the use of columns allows us to make the blocks of text smaller, which is easier on the eye and easier to navigate for our reader, who is a GM who's trying to use our product at the table. The next feature of your document should be the headings. And headings are a type of style that you can apply to your text that can change the font, the size, underlines, the color, whether it's italic or bold. And it allows you to set off what a heading or a subheading looks like versus the regular blocks of text, the body text. Um, uh, I try not to use too many heading levels. If you're in a program like Word, you can open up the styles and see that there might be 3 to 7 built-in heading levels. And you can modify all of those if you don't like the fonts and colors and whatever. You can change them just by clicking modify, and you can learn how to do that, which I strongly encourage you to do. But I try to minimize the number of headings and heading levels that I use in a document because on the page, for the person looking at it, it's very hard sometimes to tell that this is heading level 1 and this is level 2 and this is level 3 and this goes under this, but this is back to level 2 again, so that's at the same level. It's easy when we're doing it online, when we're building the document, because we can see, oh, I applied heading level 4 to this. But of course, for the reader, they're just looking at text that's a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, a little bit more bold, and they can't tell the difference. It's just offset in a different way. And if you have too many heading levels, they might start to wonder, wait, what does italic mean? Does that mean it's a creature inside this room? Is it a creature outside the room? What does it mean? So I don't want to give the GMs reasons to question the document. The layout is there to be helpful and not get in the way. So I tend to just use one heading level, which is usually the location name, where we are. And sometimes there's a second heading level under it, which is very clearly smaller and subservient to it, which is some feature inside the room. But I try not to do anything more complex than that with the location text. So headers, very important, but don't overuse them because it can just become complex and cluttered on the page. So try to minimize your use of headings, but do use them. The next feature I want to talk about are lists. I use lots of lists inside my document designs and layouts. Those include numbered lists and bulleted lists. Both have their place, both have their functions. Within a room, obviously there are going to be details about your location. Usually those are unnumbered bullet points. Sometimes I give the GM an ability to roll a d6 to find out, what is this trap going to shoot at you? What kind is it, acid or fire or whatever? I'll say roll a d6, and then there'll be a numbered list, and 1 is fire and 2 is ice and whatever it may be. Or sometimes there's something much more interesting. If you eat this thing, there's a mutation, roll a d6, and here's a numbered list of what the outcomes are. So 1 is you grow a third eye, and 2 is you grow a third arm, whatever it may be. So I use numbered and unnumbered lists frequently throughout my documents. I think, again, it's a way to break up the text into smaller pieces, which is easier on the eye, easier to scan for the reader. And it's important to make sure you're using the right type for the right reason. Usually, I only use a numbered list for something like a random table where you're rolling and the numbers actually align to a roll, or if there's a sequence of events that happen in order. Numbered lists are also called ordered lists. So those would be the reason to use numbered lists. The rest of the time I would use bullets, which are also called unordered lists or non-ordered. Disordered, not disordered, but not ordered. And you can also, in most of your programs, modify what the bullet looks like. So if you don't want it to be just a dot, you can make it square or triangle or some other piece of art, which can make your document more unique. You can also control the amount of space in between those blocks of bullets, so you can separate them more and more to make it easier to read. And as you can see in a lot of my bullets, I'll have some kind of header word that's bolded in some fashion, which is a way for someone to scan down and see, what is this bullet about? This bullet is about the window. This bullet is about the door. And they can jump to whatever. This bullet is about the corpse in the corner. It makes it easier, again, to scan the document and find the information that you need quickly at the table. Another feature that you'll want to be able to use effectively in your document layout and design are ways to highlight blocks of text or just words or phrases. And this can be all of the standard features that we're used to using: italics, bold, underline, uses of color, just to make this word stand out. Maybe it's because this word is going to have a bullet point down below that has more detail about it. Maybe it's the person's name. Maybe you decide you want to highlight all of the names of people. Whatever it may be that is important to you, that's important to your adventure, that you want to call attention to. Maybe it's references to page numbers. You want to make sure that those page numbers catch the eye. We need to go to page 7 to find out about this plague. So whatever it may be, you need to be consistent, which again, you can use your styles. In addition to a paragraph style like a header, you can also do a character style, which is just a way to apply highlighting to a word. So you can just create a style that's called something like highlight or bold or character name, because you want to use this on all the character names. Then you can apply that style to all your character names. And then later, if you decide, oh, that bold isn't bold enough or big enough, or I want them to be all caps, instead of having to go through your whole document and fix them all, you can just change the style, that character style, to say, oh, I want my character names to be all caps, and then poof, all throughout your document, they're all caps. So whatever it is you decide to do, I again encourage you to use styles, become master of styles, spend some time learning how to use them and modify them and apply them correctly. It'll make you a power user. It'll make your documents look better. It'll make it easier for you to manage your document and keep your document looking consistent from beginning to end. Uh, However, caveat to all that, please don't overuse all of these highlighting features to make text special. For one, if you use too many things in too many places, it just becomes chaotic. Why is this word bolded, but the one next to it's underlined and the one next to it's italic? Because you've decided that those all mean different things. But again, we have to think about the GM who's trying to play a game at a table. They can't be interpreting all of these different iconographies that we've created in our document. So again, just like headings, I encourage you to pick something that works for you, that makes sense, and try to limit it and be very specific in its use. And don't overload your document, making everything special. We also need to be thoughtful about people who may have different types of screens, different kinds of printers, or different types of vision. I tend not to use color to differentiate between different types of text in my documents because they may not print well, may not appear correctly on the screen, and some people can't see color the same way that I do. So I tend not to rely on that as a tool. So instead, usually I'll apply something like bold and underline just so your eye jumps to that word and maybe nothing else. But again, please play with it, experiment, figure out what works for you, and commit to it throughout your document. And if you don't like that style after the fact, you can change it for the next product. You absolutely don't have to be married to it. I've tried to be consistent through my adventure designs, my layouts, just so if you've become accustomed to it, from the last two, the third one is the same, and you don't have to relearn how to read the document. But I don't consider myself married to one, and if I come up with a better idea of how to present, I'm perfectly happy to change for the next design, the next layout. Another element in your layout, in your adventure design that you need to think about are the maps, because you should have at least one map. And maps should be clearly labeled. They may also need to be titled, so we know what is this map. This is a map of the East Forest, and this is the map of the West Forest. But locations should be very easy to find with either the numbers or the names of the locations, whatever you choose to use. And again, you want to be consistent with the use throughout. So after you create a draft, you should print it out, look at it on paper, make sure that everything's there, but also make sure it's easy to find. Where is 1, 2, 3, 4? Pretend that you haven't seen it before, or show it to a friend, see if they can spot all of the locations. Make sure none of the numbers or the text is lost in the artwork or something. But just like everything else, be thoughtful, be consistent, and double check, make sure it's legible and usable at the table. The last design element I want to talk about is the cover. I'm not going to try to talk about marketing. I don't think I'm very good at marketing. I don't know how marketing works. I know that cover art is important. I know that titles are important. In terms of layout and design, what I encourage you to do is make sure that your title is clear and legible, easy to read. So that may impact what font you choose and how big to make it. The artwork should clearly also, similarly, also be clear and easy to identify and recognize what it is. And your name should be on there. Any other contributors' names, maybe artists or whoever it may be. And this is, again, just like maps. I encourage you to, after you do your layout, print it out, look at it on paper, see if it still scans and the organization makes sense. Also, on your screen, shrink it down to thumbnail size, to the size that some people may see it when they click on it, either on a sales site or on your website. It may be much smaller. And ask yourself, is it recognizable? Is the text legible at that size? And if not, maybe rethink what font you chose or how large it may be. So as always, we want to be artful, but we also need to be useful. We need to be effective in communicating. So whatever it is you're working on, whether it's the cover, whether it's the text or some other element, take your time and be critical of whatever you've come up with. Make sure it works for real, not just looks good in the moment. Let it sit for a while, come back to it, make sure you still like it, make sure it still makes sense. I think that's all of my advice for layout and design of documents. This is something I have a lot of experience with, but I also know that makes me a little stuck in my ways. So while I know how to use the tools, I may just be using the tools a certain way because I'm used to doing it that way. So I'm hoping that by giving you all of these concepts to think about and to research and to practice with, hopefully you'll do it better than I did, and you'll come up with new ideas and new ways to do things. Obviously, if you look at products like the books from Merkborg, there are lots of brilliant and artistic ways to design and lay out an adventure or a gaming book. And some of them require a lot more skill and a lot more knowledge of your tools and a lot more, I don't know, creative inspiration. Um, I've always been focused on utility, so my layouts tend to be more utilitarian. You should figure out what works for you. So please get a good piece of software, whether it's Word or InDesign or something else, uh, LibreOffice. Take some time, take a Saturday, sit down, click through all of the menu options, play with it, build yourself a template, uh, grab some text from somewhere else if you don't have your own text yet, and experiment with it, modify it, change it around, and see what works for you, see what speaks to you, and also try to come up with layouts and designs and elements that work well with this adventure. So if it's a dark gothic vampire adventure, try to reflect that in some way in the design, in your font choices. And if it's high tech sci-fi, again, shift the other way, change your layouts, change your designs, use different elements like lines and bullet points that reflect and evoke whatever it is you're trying to get from the adventure itself. And I think that's just about all the advice I have. So good luck out there.